Good morning, welcome to Talking Point. For all those who could hear me in the west, east, south, and north, my name is Sean Michael Small. Once again, glad to be with you this morning in order to speak about what I believe are the important issues of the day. Now, therein lies the interesting conundrum, right? Who decides what is important? And to some extent, every show host, producer, production team will make decisions based on what they believe is important. And for me, there are certain things with regards to society I believe important enough, and sometimes I'm able to highlight things maybe in a different way, or maybe things that are not getting the attention that I feel that it deserves, or perhaps even things that obviously are important but aren't necessarily getting the attention that they do deserve. I mean, most recently this week we brought it back up again with regards to the incidents of the accused and what happened in police custody. Investigations are being made. There's a whole slew of perceptions, reports, how we are viewed by the rest of the world with regards to our corruption and with regards to our freedom because of matters like that. And national community doesn't necessarily seem to have a reason or want to talk about it now, and I fear it's being forgotten. I believe that, okay, we have commissioners now for the Commissioner Macquarie of Paria, but I fear also that to some extent that tragedy is rather quickly being forgotten. Yes, when new news items come up, media will report on it, but to what extent will we as a country really still have that sense of urgency to demand for answers with regards to that situation? And then there's another side to that equation. Our Prime Minister, and I have to say our Prime Minister because at the end of the day, I think everybody seems to forget that the country collectively held elections and elected him. With that said, our Prime Minister had a press conference yesterday at Piarco Airport, and for the life of me, I understand the topic, I believe I understand the topic that he was speaking about in the main body of the press conference. I wasn't entirely sure why he felt the need to bring it up in a press conference, because it's not as though there is an expectation that the government will hold regular press conferences to report on, detailed ongoings of various situations. Because there are a lot of things where government, just in general, does not necessarily hold press conferences to speak on them. Things that are more pressing. Now, what he said again was important. That was with regards to how the United States and other, you could argue then other countries in the first world, how they view CARICOM and our banking system. Because one of the things that has been an ongoing back and forth is our compliance to certain standards and security norms so that we are not viewed as being, well, one of the end results is sponsors of terrorism, or having that capacity for corruption to be sponsors of terrorism, or maybe not necessarily sponsors, but facilitating the flow of liquidity for those types of activities. So I get it, it's an important thing, because the Prime Minister was pointing out that maybe there's a double standard there, and how the nations who are potentially accusing us, it's not as though they are not acting or not doing some of the very same things that we're doing that are causing them to accuse us of potentially having, corruption, lack of compliance, poor security, potentially facilitating terrorism. Okay. But he was basically reporting on a situation that was not resolved. The problem is not entirely new. They were addressing the problem diplomatically before COVID. He didn't necessarily go into all of it as it started, as they had talks. He just kind of gave us an update for something we didn't necessarily even know needed updating. but the resolution is still a work in progress. There are a lot of other things we would like to get that level of communication on. One of them being the TNTech report, or rather the report on the blackout. Now, interestingly enough, he did report, he did update us while we got the report. And then, of course, the Minister of Public Utilities was asked, and he was not at the time in a position to give an answer. And I fully believe it's because, at the end of the day, the government likes to have a consensus with cabinet to formulate their messaging, at least sometimes. I don't know if they do it all the time, because their messaging is not always necessarily consistent, and there are a few times where you do wonder who it is that approved something that was decided upon. But in this case, ironically enough, they have the report. The Prime Minister has asked a question on the report, and it's actually the questions that made the time, I believe, more valuable, because we were able to get some responses to more pressing issues. Because again, to the average voter, we can't really do anything, control anything, we see nothing with regards to diplomatic efforts. I'm not even sure if the Prime Minister has fully explained just how it might affect us. I don't think he went so far into his explanation. But the blackout is something that affects us. And it's pressing to the needs of the citizens of TNT, because we don't know, could it happen tomorrow? But more importantly, as we have seen in other incidents recently, do we have proper plans in place to deal with emergencies like that? So we want the process to keep moving so that we could have some confidence in a resolution. And the Prime Minister revealed, he said rather, the Minister will decide if and when to release the report, which I find odd, that he would basically say it's the Minister who's going to make that decision. I am under the impression that perhaps outside of one or two ministers, one or two senior ministers, more or less almost everything that we hear is something determined by cabinet and or the party. Because they're senior party officials who are not necessarily cabinet officials. But I go back. Prime Minister had a press conference, and the press conference itself, I didn't necessarily understand. You could have spoken to it in a report. A reporter could have reported on what you had to say, because it was an update to a very long-term issue that did not need a live update now. However, I'm complaining, but in a way I'm shooting myself in my own foot. Because he took a press conference. The press conference, he was in front of reporters, willing to ask questions. And they asked questions about several things. One of the things that they asked, of course, is with regards to crime. It's interesting how we monitor crime. First of all, because the media has to report on it. There will be times when things slip through the cracks. But more importantly, it's tricky business in media, because if you're not careful, it will seem as though you're profiting on unfortunate circumstances, right? Throughout the pandemic, it seemed as though certain stations were profiting on the pandemic. Certain commentators might have said that about me, I don't know. So now when a newspaper or a newscast reports about crime story, and they put some sensational headline, or they put some sensational pictures, it might look like they're profiting off of it. But perception aside on crime, at some point, we're going to feel it. And we're going to feel it with the types of crimes. And we're going to feel the rise as it continues to build. And I believe over the Easter weekend, for whatever reason, you would think it's a time for vacation and for rest and relaxation. And that was a time when a significant amount of unfortunate incidents occurred. And I think the murder rate over a 7-day period was something like 14 or 15 people. Maybe it was less, but it was close to 2 to 1, which, as bad as our murder rate is, it's not 2 to 1 average per day just yet. So we have a clip here, the first clip from the Prime Minister, asked about crime. He had some interesting things to say. Let's take a look at this.
To see to that.
Statements of generalizations are not helpful in these situations because I don't know there's anybody running away from the fact that we are a violent society, and in recent years a number of persons have got their hands on firearms, handguns in particular, and in recent times, worse, some of our citizens have got their hands on heavier weapons, automatic assault weapons, and some of our people have been engaged in crime for profit. But then a lot of the crime is also done and only known to us when it's done in the household. I know that there are calls for the government to do more, but there are certain limitations to what the government can do with respect to household crimes. But the gun crimes, which are largely the main stream of crime in this country, the government is engaged. The police service, the SSA, we gather information, we act upon it, and of course we are hoping that the justice system would be one where we can get trials and convictions quickly. Unfortunately, that is not happening, and we just have to keep doing more of what we believe will work. And by the same time, we appeal to the population to support the police.
See these increases.
We do have some structure where some help is available, but having it available does not mean that people will use it. We do have openings, and if there's need for more of that, then we will provide more. But what we're finding, and the appeals coming from the relevant persons who are involved in managing that, the appeal is to persons, if you are having difficulty, seek help, because help is available. The fact that it's available on the government's initiative, on the government's payroll, is no guarantee that persons who need it will use it. And that is particularly true with respect to inter-family stresses. You would have seen in the newspapers that members of the family were saying that they never knew that certain persons had problems of that nature, which could have driven them to have behaved in a particular way. In that situation, what do? People don't change color, they don't change height because they are thinking a particular way. You have to keep saying, if you are experiencing that kind of difficulty, guiding you to that kind of destination, reach out for help. There is some help available, some significant help is available. And if that unit, that department is overwhelmed by the demand for help, then we can expand that if needs be.
So the Prime Minister is basically calling out the level of violence in our society. And is that a fair statement to make? While I might not like it, and obviously not everybody is violent, but collectively speaking, what is the argument against that statement? Because we do have a significantly high murder rate. We do have a crime problem. We also have a criminal justice problem. So when the Prime Minister says, well, we have to keep doing the things that we think we have to do that work, keep on keeping on. I do wonder, okay, that's fine if the system was relatively fine. Is the system relatively fine? I made a point yesterday comparing education to the criminal justice system because I felt the criminal justice system had major holes. Now I pointed out some of my concerns with the education system at more or less every level with regards to the ministry, with regards to teachers, with regards to the union, with regards to schools themselves. With regards to crime, I mean, we have concerns on the TTPS, judiciary. We have concerns with some of the legislation. We have concerns with the prisons. We have concerns with over 50% of our incarcerated, and our incarceration rate is in the upper sixth of the world. Our incarceration rate is in the upper sixth of the world. And a bit over half of that is pre-trial incarceration, not convicted criminals. So we do have a lot of concerns. We have a lot of concerns with guarding our borders from smuggling, drugs, human trafficking, guns. And we get it. We have a problem with gangs. And to some extent, that is a long-term and difficult issue to deal with. If it was easy, then a lot of other countries would have sorted out their gang problems a long time ago. But post-pandemic, post the previous 2 years, I should say rather, the stress of society seems to be causing murder-suicides, lashing out. How many news cases, the girl that was killed after being beaten, allegedly, by the soldier? What about the 6-year-old boy whose parents, I believe, are now being charged? So, these domestic cases, I am very glad the Prime Minister did not reuse an old line that he used during the beginning of his first term, or in his first term. Because I said it before, I don't know if I said it on this show, that line basically killed the conversation, but the conversation was an important one, and that is the truth. It is difficult for any sort of protective service to detect crimes that happen behind closed doors. And now, here is the challenge. Are we a violent society? Maybe we are, maybe we aren't. But unfortunately, part of the problem with the criminal justice system, and it's not to say that, you know, it's something easy to fix, you know, and what a shame for all of us who don't properly participate by helping the police detect and prosecute crimes. Because first of all, if they don't know, do you want the police to have the freedom to just go into anybody's house under any sort of weak suspicion? Because there's a tendency when things get out of hand for the public to demand for overcorrective measures. And overcorrective measures with regards to crime will lead to a reduction of your rights. So for the system to respect your rights but still work effectively, at some point, in some cases, particularly in domestic cases, it's going to need our participation. It's going to require us to not say, I don't want to get involved. I don't want to see anything bad happen to my family member. But you're watching that family member potentially do something bad to another family member. Somehow that's okay. Abuse, violence, lashing out, which could lead to murder-suicide. So it's not good for the victim, and it's not even good for the perpetrator, that outcome. It's fine to just watch, because we don't want to send them to prison. The abuse on one is acceptable, but we don't want to send him to prison. That's telling. Because you know he could end up there. You know prison is not a nice place. But you're willing to let the victim continue to suffer. That's not necessarily the scenario in all cases. But regardless for what the motivation is, and I get it, I do, you know. I am guilty of that too. When you hear a scream or a shout, the first thing you do, and to some extent rightfully so, you don't just call the police for every little thing. But then I do remember as a child, there was a lady in my street, 2 guys mugged her in her own car, right on my street, and I heard it. I didn't know what to make of it. I was a child. That's my excuse. But I felt bad because it's only after they left I realized what happened. And I wonder what would have happened if I or somebody else said something. I might have been not so young, maybe a bit older, maybe 12 or a teenager. Maybe that lady might have been given assistance in time. My street. Are we a violent society? I think as much as you might want to criticize the question because you want to criticize the man, take the man out of it. As I started off with this topic, he is our Prime Minister, whether you like him or not. You know, you could be a PNM supporter till you die. The UNC is your opposition. You have a vested interest in the other party fulfilling the role that it has in government. We all have a vested interest in both parties fulfilling the role that they have in government. But the funny thing is, we keep complaining how bad the government is, how bad the government is, this government, the next government, they're all bad, all politicians bad. Public servants bad, everybody's bad. None of them know how to do their job. They're bad at their jobs, they're slow, they're inefficient, they're stupid. By the way, fix everything for me, please. Fix everything for me. I don't want to do nothing. You gotta fix everything for me. If they're so bad, why are you depending on them to fix everything for you? Yes, crime is a big thing, but at least, with regards to domestic matters, you know, some of it we have to do it. At the very, very minimum, we have to be willing to try to get them help, as the Prime Minister said. And if they don't want help, if they refuse help, if they deny help, if they actively push you away, then for the sake of the victim, you take it to the next step. Call the TTPS if you have to. Children's Authority, whoever. There are a couple of kids right now that wish somebody made a call for them. All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, there's another story that came out of the reporters' questions from the Prime Minister's press conference that I think some of you might have read already, but it's important for us to hear. This is Talking Point, WESN, your content capital. Friday, end of the week. It is a beautiful day today. We'll be right back.
There's a taste in the air everywhere. Feel the vibe 'cause it's something to share. Smooth, rich and creamy, you'll find it right here. Makes you smile, relax a while, it's fun and good cheer. Special. Come along, enjoy your treats. This is Uncle Pete's.
We dare you to dream, to see beyond the struggle, to envision the possibilities, to live life with unlimited vision. Ferrera Optical supports you with complete eyewear starting at only $795. Let's make those dreams a reality. So book your visit via 227-7000, WhatsApp message 278-2878, or at FerreraOptical.com today. We dare you to keep going. Ferrera Optical says, don't limit your vision.
Join the journey to the Northern Range. Come, sing the chorus.
All I want for my love.
Family Family, a tribute to Lord Nelson.
So we holding on, going from dusk to dawn.
North Coast Jazz, born here, played here.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit?
Yes.
What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive, it is not rehabilitative.
We, the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole, it's for all of us in public.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andy.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
If you live with someone who's tested positive for COVID-19 and has to self-isolate at home, take care of them from a distance and reduce their movement around the house. Give them space, a designated space, and open those windows. If you have to be in contact, mask up, both of you. If you work, stay home from work and don't go out, not even to the grocery or pharmacy. And remember, no visitors allowed. Limit the contact to limit the spread.
The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
Welcome back. So a couple of things before I get to the next topic. First of all, COVID infection rates have spiked again, which is why I corrected myself earlier in the show to say that we're not necessarily at the end. However, it's not to say that COVID is going to come back, but just, again, we will always ask all of our viewers, please don't be complacent. Even when, we hear that it's in its endemic stage, it's going to be a part of our society, that means it is going to be around. And until we know a bit more and we figure it out, so at least in the immediate or short term, still, especially with regards to trying to keep distance from other random people in the public that you might run into on a daily basis. Because the one thing we know about the current variant is it's very infectious. It might not be as dangerous, but at the end of the day, you don't necessarily want to catch it, then be at risk of spreading it. There are still going to be some people who are vulnerable to it. It's a bit of luck of the dice at this point because there always were some people whose physiology, who their individual characteristics made them a bit more vulnerable. Some of the things we know about, like NCD, so many things we might not still yet understand even now. So, just be careful, because at the end of the day, you also don't want to be sick with something highly infectious for a week or two. Now, with that said, also with regards to the Paria situation, it seems as though the survivor, I'm not too sure with regards to how he's being treated. These things are complicated. He's a survivor. Does his employer, does Paria, what is their level of responsibility? It is very complex. So I'm not going to say that it's simple and straightforward and he just needs everything to be handled by party A or party B. However, it is something, again, that we do have to look out for. Because if it was us, we would want our fellow citizens to stand up for us, to try to encourage, demand proper treatment. That's all I'm saying. So with regards to his medical assistants, who is responsible for that? With regards to which doctors will be approved, insurance, all of these things. I think this is also one of the areas where maybe we need to examine our policies, our regulations, our practices with things that aren't regular occurrences. Just because they don't happen often doesn't mean that they won't happen. And you don't want to be caught with your pants down trying to scramble what is the correct policy, or worse yet, going with ineffective or bad policy. But I'll leave that there for now. I don't want to get into that too much. The Prime Minister, he had more to say. Again, the press conference was on an important topic, but that could have been handled in a press release, in an interview. I don't know if it needed a press conference. Now, that said, the event did not necessarily seem to be that big per se. And I have to admit, it gave reporters a chance to ask the Prime Minister some pertinent questions on pertinent issues. So one of the things, obviously, these days is the increase in the cost of fuel. And we have now experienced it for a week. There are various protests, different groups are now saying, well, after a few days, they're rethinking their current prices. Their prices might have to rise to compensate for the increase in the price of gas. The Prime Minister had an interesting take. So let's hear it. Please, again, try to take your bias out of it, because listen to the content and evaluate it, for better or worse, on what it is and not just who's saying it. Let's take a listen.
They're protesting the price increase of diesel. Well, we've increased the price of diesel by 50 cents. On this matter of the price increase for fuel, I simply want to say that the conversation of those who believe that something wrong has happened, let the conversation go a little further. Understand that the increase that is being borne is not the total increase for obtaining those products. The government is bearing a significant portion of the cost, and what is being protested is a portion of the cost. I think the conversation should make that clear. It is not that there has been a price increase to obtain the products and the government has said, okay, just pay it. The government has done otherwise. The government has said, taxpayers, because remember, the government doesn't have its own money. Government acts on behalf of taxpayers. The government has said, taxpayers in general will bear, in this instance, 50% of that increase, and the users will organize their business to bear the other 50%, bearing in mind that the product that you are consuming is now more expensive than it was before. Yes, we are formulating at this point in time that trigger point where we did say early on that each month a posted price would be put there, and that posted price would be related to the prevailing market circumstance. We are going to get there very soon, and the Minister of Finance is already working on that. And the trigger point would be made known to the population, and we are hoping that we'll be in a position where the first of each month we can post a price in relation to what I've just said. And if the price goes down below that, the same way we have raised it in the context of the subsidy, it is reasonable for people to expect that if the price goes down, that significantly, that the price at the pump will go down. That is something that we will be doing for the first time in this country for a long time, which is standard prices. Of course, you would know the cynics will say, when the price is going up, it goes up very quickly. But it defies gravity when the price starts going down. But these are things that the marketplace will deal with.
So, what did the Prime Minister say? Well, there were some things that he said, overtly, that we do need to realize who is benefiting from the increase in the price of gas. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe an economist who is better tuned into the situation would be able to correct me. Call in on the show later and correct me. But from what I understand, the price is being controlled by a subsidy, which means that no matter what we pay, the private interest that collects that revenue is collecting the same revenue because the subsidy is just making up the difference. So he's pointing out one aspect of the reality that maybe some of the opposition, and I don't mean just the parliamentarian opposition, I mean the opposition to this situation, is not considering. It's taxpayers' money that's making the difference. So for all intents and purposes, as a society, we're paying for it, one way or the other. The other thing that he pointed out was, well, it's not as though the price increased and we removed the subsidy, or we're just deciding to remove the subsidy in an arbitrary state of time. Rather, it is just that for part of the price increase, and he said 50%, he started off saying a significant amount or alluding to it was greater than 50, but he said 50%. I don't know if he meant that as an example just for the sake of the discussion, but the subsidy is still amounting or still contributing towards 50% of the increase. I believe that's what he was saying. And we will bear the other 50%. And I get it, to a lot of people, particularly those on the margins, those who don't have a lot of wiggle room, this is not good news. Not just because could their household or business or employer absorb the price of fuel, but then all of the other contractors or suppliers that supply them. Everything else is going to go up in the economy around them. So I get it. It's not an easy thing to accept. But what is the alternative that we're demanding? And why are we saying it's unreasonable? Therein lies the question. Is it unreasonable in the grand scheme of things? I get it. I'm going to sound like a callous fool and a government shill. I'm not saying it isn't unreasonable. I'm asking the question. Maybe a smaller increase would have been more reasonable. Maybe a larger increase would have been more reasonable. Generally, the government tends to not like to do things that are unpopular because they want to get elected. It's very simple when you keep reminding yourself about that. So to what extent did they see the need that they had to do this? Now, one of the things he did not necessarily directly say is with regards to problems with revenue. Because not only do we have to worry about our general budget, all the transfers and subsidies that the society might want government to keep, all of the salaries that have to be paid, all of the services that have to be paid for that government just has to do, right? Certain things that private interests, well, you don't want them to do it. You don't want them to manage judiciary, fire service, police service, certain aspects of healthcare. You want certain safety nets. You want certain services to be for the public good and not for profit. Fine. But we also have debt to pay back. And maybe if we had phenomenal growth, we won't have to worry so much about the debt. But growth right now, IMF report, a lot of other Caribbean countries are feeling it. the Bahamas or Bermuda, St. Lucia, they had to downgrade their expectations. I think either Bermuda or Bahamas is 7% inflation. That's what they're expecting. We're 4%. Well, at least I believe we're 4% right now. So revenue is a problem. And at the end of the day, the government is not some big corporation employer, and if they go bust, we'll find another job somewhere. The government is the only government we have. We have one government. They hold all of our taxes for the public good as agents of the people. If they go bankrupt, it's not their loss, it's our loss. That's why elections are so important, by the way. So we don't want the government to fail financially because it's not the PNM. Well, yes, it is the PNM who failed in government, you could argue. But where government goes, whichever party it is, the country tends to go with it, whether we like it or not. And in this case, you could argue government might include the opposition as well. They are part of the government. They have a role to play. It is something that we will keep bringing up because it's one of the few things to bring up with regards to what they're doing wrong because they don't set policy. And the Prime Minister also said, and this is where, of course, if he goes back on this in any which way, by all means, take him to task for it. But he said it is reasonable that when the price goes back down to a certain point, the price increase will drop because the subsidy that has to be paid will be significantly smaller. One of the few silver linings of when the price of oil was ridiculously low, as much as it was giving us a lot of pressure, at least the subsidy was not large, so that did not compound the situations. But now the subsidy is one of the things that's taking what could have been an otherwise good situation and making it more complicated. We can't just assume, well, the government will pay for it. How many things you want the government to pay for? How many different projects? How many different services you desire? Can't pay for everything. This is why I have a problem with the airport in Tobago. I'm going to harp on that and make no excuses for it. Because that's 1.2 billion. But even then, that is a capital expenditure. It's not ongoing money that they'll be saving if they scrap it. We'll have the lump sum, but to what extent will that make a difference long term? Or rather, that's not going to save us from ongoing expenditure problems. The subsidy is an ongoing expenditure. So I get it. I understand people's frustration. This is where, ideally, we elect people who are smart, intelligent, have good ethics, good problem-solving skills, have attention to a lot of details, could focus in and assess all the different variables accurately, will take enough time to not make errors, but not too much time that they are paralyzed, inefficient, and moving at a snail's pace so that it doesn't matter what their decision is, it's ineffectual because it's too late. There's a lot with regards to government. And I think it brings back the question now of why are we electing people based on the color of their shirt or the symbol that they wear on their chest, on the flags that they wave? And why aren't we looking at the actual credentials of each individual candidate and elect them based on that? Because then what happens? Why so-and-so is this minister and why so-and-so is that minister? Well, in some cases, it's not as though they have a lot of choices. It's not as though we have a lot of choices for Minister of National Security. I'm not necessarily going to sit here and defend the current choice. But who else do you want? Somebody will find some fault with just about any and everybody that you pick. Between all the senators, all of the MPs, yeah, you could reshuffle a senator to bring in somebody to be the Minister of National Security. Who? Who is that clear-cut person to do that or will clean up crime? That's what we're faced with when we elect people, because that's the slate and that's the party. Opposition, same way. Yes, they have new people in, but there's a whole other issue with regards to what happens to new politicians, what they have to do in order to remain in the party's good graces for that upward ascent to get anywhere. It's a whole internal dog and pony show. Office politics writ large. But this is what we're left with. So it's a complex situation because things could be bad either way. Spending all the money and then not having it for something that's absolutely necessary down the line or even like next month. That's a big deal. Cutting the subsidy and affecting the economy, even if it's a small cut, that is a big deal. In the long run, as we have mentioned before, some of these transfers and subsidies that society believe they are entitled to, well, here's the other catch with that. They were brought about because the energy industry was providing a lot of revenue to the country. And the reason why, in this subsidy in particular, was put in place was to spread the wealth. By the way, the concept of that, I have a problem with. Because money is going down the drain just so that people could have an easier time in the short term. It's not invested so that we could have dividends down the line. I have a problem with that philosophy. But what's done is done. I'm not going to make a big deal out of that. The point ultimately is it was done when things were good, when there was money to spend and spread around. And maybe this is the fault of the government. Not that. It's not necessarily their fault that the revenue streams are dead. Because as much as we harp on diversification, there are times, or there were times when, based on economic theory at the time, based on the direction the world was going at the time, diversification was not going to be easy. That's not to say that holds true for our entire history. But ultimately, when things aren't plenty, why do we feel entitled to these things? And this is one of the reasons why I think having them is a double-edged sword, because your economy comes to a balance point with them, because it's easy. It's not a negative shock. It's not a negative shock when you have, these subsidies, these transfers, this extra money, people are happy. So absorbing something positive, that's easy. But when you can't afford it anymore, to withdraw it as a negative shock, and then it's never the right time. It's never the right time, and then all of a sudden, we can't figure out why we're $2 to $10 billion above the budget with deficit annually. And we have a deficit to GDP ratio, I believe, at around 80%. And we have multiple loans because we don't have enough funds in reserve for emergencies, so we had to borrow. To be fair, everybody had to borrow, true, but also everybody has to pay it back. And we just don't have the revenue. So, take away your party affiliation. Was what the Prime Minister said reasonable or unreasonable? Do you want taxpayers' money to foot the bill? Or are you willing to pay $1 more? That's it, right? Because the flip side is he could have kept the subsidy and added more taxes. It's a weird situation. Ultimately, do we hope the government will use the extra money responsibly? That's a whole other question I don't have time to get into. And that is the one pushback to what everything I've just said. That's my counterpoint. Do we have expectations now for the government to be effective with the money that they save by not having to pay it out in the subsidy for fuel? Or is it that the government just did not have the money for the fuel subsidy in the first place? And it's not a choice that they made, but it was something that they were forced to do. And they don't really have the capacity to do anything more. And what a bad situation, maybe a bad sign, that would be for us. But it is 9. We have to take a break right now. News on the hour coming up. When we return, it's the last day of the week. I will take your calls. Call in with whatever it is that you want to say. Call in. And like the caller yesterday from San Fernando, if you have any issue with what I said, bring it up. Let's have a discussion. Let's have a debate. I appreciate that call and that caller on that topic very much. I hope to hear more of the same today. News on the hour next. WSN Talking Point. We'll be right back.
Seven is out. All day is in. WESN News on the hour.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
In this season, we talk more about health, wellness, and everything in between. I am so excited to share with you everything about health and wellness so that you can design the life that you've always dreamed of. Join me here on What's Up Doc.
What's Up Doc, Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m. only on WESN, Content Capital.
Burning questions, urgent topics. Welcome back to One on One, the show where we tackle the most current and pertinent subjects that are affecting all citizens, where we ask the hard questions and have in-depth conversations. What separates One on One from other talk shows is that the conversation stems from a younger perspective on topics that affect the fabric of our society. One on One, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. on WESN, Content Capital.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
A reminder from WESN. We urge you to protect yourself and others from the spread of COVID-19. Stay safe by taking some simple precautions. Clean your hands often. Use soap and water or an alcohol-based hand rub. Maintain a safe distance from anyone who is coughing or sneezing. Wear a mask. Don't touch your eyes, nose or mouth. Cover your nose and mouth with your bent elbow or a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Stay at home. If you have a fever, cough and difficulty breathing, seek medical attention. Following the above can help us all to help each other.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. Now is the time we open up the phone lines, hear from you, the viewer. I want to hear what you have to say. It's the end of the week. What is on your mind with regards to anything that I've said? 623-9376, 622-9338. Tell me where you disagree, where you agree, or bring up something that I did not mention, because at the end of the day, you can only talk about so many things, bring up so many things within an hour, less than an hour actually. What do you have to say? In the meantime, while I wait for your calls, there's another aspect with regards to the rising violence that is to be pointed out, and that is with regards to schools. The Prime Minister did touch on it. It was interesting, and I get it, reporters, it's not necessarily questions, or rather, not all of the questions that they ask are questions that personally they want to, champion or support or the concept behind it is something that's important to them. But the Prime Minister did say to the question with regards to corporal punishment, we cannot beat our way out of this. And I think that's a very important statement to understand. There's a reason why corporal punishment is out of schools. We have a caller from Tobago. Good morning.
Good morning, Sean Michael Smalls. How are you doing this morning, sir?
I'm doing all right.
Very good. Enjoyed your discourse this morning. In regards to crime, Sean, this is an area that should be of concern to all of us, as you rightly stated. Crime is a social problem.
Yes.
And it's particularly out of control in countries that do not have a cultural base. They're not living on their square, so to speak. The United States, supposedly one of the richest countries in the world, has the most incarcerated prisoners per capita. It leads the world in incarcerated prisoners, and this is on the federal level. We're not even talking the local level. This is the United States. The United States leads the world. It's what to say, the capital of the world, so to speak, that other countries are somehow mimicking and trying to be like the United States, so to speak. And this is the country that is leading everyone down this rabbit hole of non-cultural expressions where people don't know who they are. So they're just running around in their country, bumping into each other, taking from each other. And there is no, there's a lack of compassion, there's a lack of unity, a lack of we're all in this together. It's more of a every man for himself, which is the atmosphere of the United States, like a Babylonian type of situation that the Rastas will speak of from time to time, where it's just every man for himself. You can go to the United States today and become rich tomorrow. You know, you can go rob a bank, you can go sell drugs and all these sort of things and become rich tomorrow. And this is what I believe is one of the aspects that is leading Trinidad greatly. Tobago is lumped in there, but this is what I believe is part of our problem. We don't have a cultural base. We're all for cultural access. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Well, I mean, there's some interesting points you said there, and I believe the one that I want to key in most is with regards to what you say about copying the United States. Because first of all, you're right. Now, the United States is a large country, so I could forgive a little bit for things slipping through the cracks. However, they're a large country. Their systems that to manage the scope of what they have. We're a small country. We don't have to use some of those systems and treat it like how they treat it, because our circumstances are very different. And we could afford nationally, because nationally for us is a lot smaller, to have a bit more personal touches and care and consideration for various cases. However, you know, we do have our own challenges. We have a caller, so I'll get into that a bit more down the road. Claxon Bay, good morning. Is this Mr. Fisherman?
Yeah. Yeah, hi, good morning.
Morning.
Yeah. Yeah, small.
Don't listen to the TV or the echo caller.
Deal with those. Yeah, with those clips to the Prime Minister, and you explain to the population, and you give them an opportunity now to make a decision what they think. This is what the media is supposed to do. The media is supposed to come out and educate the population so that they will see, hey, this making sense, boy. This is something good for not only for this community, but for the whole country to benefit. You understand? You see, we need solutions. The solutions we need today, you know. We don't need this fighting against each other. It's putting us nowhere. You understand? We need the opportunity now. How do we go forward from here? Because the pandemic supposed to teach us, you know.
Yes.
So that's what we're supposed to learn, a big lesson from the pandemic, you know. It's to change. This is ever-changing time. Times is going to change. If we don't change, the time is going to change on us. So we have to come up now and make that decision and say, hey, this is where we need to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Thank you, caller. Very important message there. The media is supposed to educate. Well, a couple of things. Our media tends to do one of two or three things. One, they try to be very neutral. But the problem with that is they're so neutral that they don't explain certain things or provide additional context or dig as deep as they should on certain things all the time. Sometimes they do, not all the time. The other issue with the media is either they are not aware of or they do not care about their own biases, because all individuals will have some biases. That is just reality. And the difference is not if I have a bias or not. The difference is, could I understand I have a bias and still try as much as possible to be objective and fair. And I think then now, that's where the education comes in, because it's tricky, it's a heavy responsibility, but Caller, to some extent you're right. As much as I don't necessarily like the fact that we need to have media bear some of that responsibility, the flip side is the media, news media in particular, are the ones who are collecting and distributing information through media channels. And that just comes with the territory of you have the information, you are in the position to educate people, there is a responsibility to do it objectively. So it's a very important thing that you said there, Caller, and especially at the end, times are changing. There's been a lot of change, and we don't know what the world will look like specifically next year. It might look similar, but the minor differences might be enough to make a big, for us to feel vast differences. As much as it doesn't look big, we might feel it. We have another caller from Port of Spain. Good morning, caller.
Good morning to you, Mr. Small.
Good morning, Port of Spain, Blanchisseuse, Woodbrook.
You name it. You asked me to tell you where I'm calling from. Mr. Small, with respect to crime in this country, I believe we must come to accept that unless we change major players in the system, we will continue to have crime. I noted well where the internationals are speaking to the issue of people committing crimes at all levels in Trinidad and Tobago with impunity. In other words, what is being said is that you could commit any crime in Trinidad and get away. In fact, they have also looked at the inability of the police service to bring people to manners, as it were, to bring them to the courts. And that is and in the both of these systems, if they are not functioning, any country will find itself in the position we are in. I've said it time and time again, there is no law and order in Trinidad and Tobago. You cannot have order, which is a platform for development, if you have no law. We have neither law nor order. In fact, when one thinks about the political situation and the political issue of crime and corruption, we have a scenario playing out today where when you approach the PNM, they are now saying to you, well, the UNC did that, We are now in a place in Trinidad where two wrongs are now making a right. We therefore have to come to grips that all these crimes are interlocked, because the youngsters who are committing the real murders and what have you are looking at the elders and noting that, look, nobody is really going to jail for whatever they do. Nobody is being charged for whatever they do. And so Trinidad and Tobago will continue to have crime that is going to get worse. There will come a day when heads will be turning up in shoeboxes all over the country. When unmarked shallow graves will become much more common than it is today. And that is because the Chief Justice is not managing his affairs to the extent that the courts are rolling. We should have a situation, given our crime, as you commit a crime, the police should be able to arrest you, and the DPP must be able to do his work so that you get charged and you're before the court within a week or two.
Well,
if we begin to do that, people will begin to behave themselves a little more because they know that they will have to pay for the crime.
Well,
crime must not pay.
Caller, I'll have to cut you there. I'm sorry, I have to cut you there. We have another call behind, but I will respond to that last comment. I agree with that. But we have another caller from Chaguanas. Thank you, Woodbrook, Port of Spain. But Chaguanas, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning again, gentlemen. Why is the media and yourself afraid to tell the nation to inspire other people that homes that are affluent, do they have children that are engaging in this kind of activities after school? Homes that are religious, do they engage in this kind of activity after school? Schools that are religious and the foundation to teaching, do they have these kind of activities after school? Homes where the parents struggle to make ends meet, to put the children to make progress, do they have this kind of thing and after school, and do they have this kind of devious behavior among children, or the children try to build a lineage among families? So the media and yourself are not telling people that, look, you have to kind of aspire to be like this, to build yourself likewise and the lineage of yourself and your family, regardless of your circumstances. One of the things, too, is I agree that the economic circumstances in a country really influences how the behavior of people are. But one of the things is the foundation of modern economics is John Adam Smith. And he said that in order to be a prosperous nation, you have to be a competitive and you have to have a comparative advantage in your economy. We have lost all our competitive advantage in everything. We had Petrotrin producing oil, that is gone. We had Buffalipso, that is gone. We had pan, that is gone. Our cultural arts, our performance arts, our visual arts, our festivals, all of these things which can build a green economy, there's no emphasis on it anymore. The thing about it is that unless you export and put tariffs on imports, you are not a wealthy nation. Unless you don't allow profit and loss and supply and demand as the invisible hand in your economy to fix the imbalances, the economy cannot perform. And once you start to interject with coercive forces at government level, with interfering with things like supplements and whatever and things, and helping with social programs and so, you start to defeat the economic activity of your country because you do not have money coming in to substitute for removing these assistance. So the problem is, once you start to talk about devaluation, you start weakening your economy. You start to weaken everything because devaluation sets in inflation. And when you start to look at inflation, unemployment, and reducing GDP, that is a sign that your economy is not getting on and making strides. And that is because the people in the economy is becoming very deviant, and the lack of support of economic prosperity.
Okay, caller. Sorry, I'll have to end it there. I hear what you're saying with regards to devaluation, with regards to the lack of comparative advantage, with regards for we need to aspire for more, and by having ambitions and hope. Now, with that, I think part of the problem is a lack of hope. That goes into a bigger question with regards to crime, but we do have another caller from Diego Martin. Good morning, caller.
Sean, so the Prime Minister and I finally agree on one thing, but there's so many different reasons for that. Some could be genetic, environmental, cultural. We've spoken about the day-to-day lives of people before. The disregard for others, others' rights, property, freedom, broken windows. Sean, look at these school fights. It's atrocious. I spent years in a boys' school and I never saw things like that. No guns, no knives. It was just normal kind of boy things. You need to know what kind of lives these children are living. Who are their parents? Are they called in? Are they held accountable? Where are the school counselors, Sean? They're not employed. Again, students come back with degrees. They need to teach.
Yeah.
They aren't employed there. Keith Rowley said there's help for those who need it. Do people know this? No, they don't. Pamphlets and brochures and things. It's not helping people. Putting stuff on papers, Employ the young people who've studied the thing. Just briefly, national insecurity people, that's another story. Suffice it to say, top criminologist Renee Cummings, she said time and time again, they need artificial intelligence, they need to empower communities, enhance quality of life, things they're simply not doing. The government and the police are not equipped to handle this level of violence. It's a multi-pronged approach. Their tools are outdated and repetitive. This is why they do not get results. And again, they do not hire the right people. Okay?
Thank you. Well,
one last thing, Sean. How long does it take to decompose a plastic bottle?
A long time. I don't know.
450 years, Sean. Today is Earth Day. Goodbye.
Thank you for that one, caller, because I will say this. While I did not stay up to date with regards to Earth Day, I do have a problem with regards to all of this talk about green locally. What are we doing about plastic bottles? Really and truly. We have a caller from Shogunas. So gosh, I can't respond to these calls. Shogunas, good morning.
Yes. Corporal punishment is a cop-out. The problem is abuse. When the Bible says spare the rod and spoil the child, it was quite correct. Now, the society have improved somewhat, but in a mixed society like Trinidad, we still have people who cannot go above corporal punishment. On the question of subsidies, I have made this point a number of occasions. We must be careful not to over-subsidize. And all gas and these things, the evidence is very clear that is over-subsidized. You have aeroplanes that wouldn't come to Trinidad with one passenger only to fill up with our subsidized gas.
Yes.
And finally, on the crime question, I've explained this to you. Crime is a consequence of our problem. Our problem is law and order. You get order in a society by enforcing your law, which we don't do. It's supposed to be done by having a minister in each ministry to make sure that this is reviewed and we go back to what they produce. My favorite topic, annual administrative reports. We don't realize how important that is. And Dr. Rowley is one should know that because he criticized Kamala Bisesa for being 4 years behind and now he is 7 years behind. Any questions, gentlemen, or as usual, you wait till you cut me off?
There's no, but I don't ask questions when you're gone, Professor. I don't. I agree with you. And I have to wrap the show up, so I have to cut your hair. But I will agree with you when you're off air. So thank you, Professor. I'm sorry, but we're 2 minutes out. So no more calls. Thank you, Professor. Thank you to all of our callers, those who agreed or disagreed. I can't address everybody specifically. There's a lot of nuance to what you said. Some of the callers, your contributions might on the surface seem to disagree. I would have loved the opportunity to deconflict and explain why I thought that they actually were along similar lines. But for the most part, some of the points that I do want to highlight, we don't enforce our laws. And I get what you were saying, and I also get Mr. Porter Spain, what you were saying. To me, it comes back to what Karen says. Well, first, what I've been saying, what are we doing about the people responsible for the 2 men who fell off a chair and died in police custody? I'm pretty sure collecting evidence in that situation should not have the same type of challenges as with regards to murders out on the street, because it was within the police building. So somebody has to be held responsible for that. And if not, that is a blatant disregard of the law. But also, as Karen also says, what about the crime bosses? What about the big fish? There is no big fish. Since when was Dole Cheney taken? We're talking over 20 years now. 20 years? So, I mean, as long as that happens, for better or worse, our criminal justice system will always look weak and inept. And the criminals who lack hope will look at that. They will look at that and they will see, maybe I could be like that. Maybe I could get that for myself. Or at the very least, enjoy life the way how some of these big boys enjoy life in crime. It might be temporary. I might not last. I might not live long to enjoy it. But it's better than living a poor life of destitution with no hope. So what extent do we have that in our schools already? I hope that we could get something done about it, but it takes time, effort, and money. Money is not something that we have in great supply. Therein lies the challenge of governance and why we need the best people we could get. Be more involved in the political process. Start from now. Don't wait for the next election. In fact, there's local government election coming up this year. Start from now. Don't wait a month away to start to try to say you're going to be involved. Don't wait until voting day to be your only contribution. Put in an X wherever it is you feel you need to put the X by. This is Talking Point. We are done for the week. Stay tuned. Later on at 10, we'll have 10 questions with Andy Johnson, I believe. But for now, thank you to all our callers once again. My name is Sean Michael Small. On behalf of those guys at Master Control holding it down despite the week, all of our viewers, thank you for watching. We will see you again Monday. Mm-hmm.